Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how to do a child's unlined fabric backpack. You start off with 2 pieces of fabric, 35 centimetres wide by 40 centimetres deep. And then stitch them together at the bottom and overlock the edge. If you have fabric that is non-directional, you can actually just cut one piece, 80 centimetres by 35 centimetres. The next thing to do is to add your label and your tabs for the cord to be threaded through later. In this case, I've taken some webbing and I've just folded it in half and stitched it down the side with 1 row of straight stitch. But you can use the 3-stitch zigzag stitch like I've used on this one if you want to. It's completely up to you. I then cut this in half and it becomes 2 pieces of 7 centimetres, and then you just fold it in half and pop it into the side like I've popped this one here, just like so. The label also would be popped into the side, so you pop the little loop at the bottom of the bag, maybe 1/2 centimetre from the bottom seam, and then the label about 2.5 centimetres above that. Because this label is quite deep, you will end up with a little bit of extra ribbon that will be cut off later. But just position that so that when the seam goes past, the writing is not obscured, and you can, but it's still not poking out too far. Then what you do, so you've got your loops on either side at the bottom, then what you do is overlock all the way around this whole piece of fabric. If you don't have an overlocker, you can use a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine. Just make sure that you trim off any loose bits after you've zigzagged it though. This is overlocking in this case. So once you've done that, you fold it in half, right side to right side, and then I fold it in half again, just up, almost but not quite up to the edge. Then I'm going to mark out where we're going to put the top hole for the cord to be threaded through. So I've measured down 3.5 centimetres. I'm using a heat erasable pen here, and I'm just going to draw on there 3.5 centimetres down, and then another 2 centimetres below that. And I'm just transferring it straight onto the other piece, the other side of the bag. So you've now got it marked for both sides there. What we're going to do is we're going to stitch with straight stitch and around about 1 centimetre wide seam from the top down to that first mark. You can use tailor's chalk or pins if you prefer. Go backwards and forwards, and then lift the foot, come down to the second mark, backwards and forwards, and then all the way down the seam to the bottom where you have the little loops connected in. And go across this loop 2 or 3 times just to make sure that it's nice and strong, because that's going to be a natural stress point on the bag. And you do the same on the other side. Once you've done that, you then press your seam open like this on both sides, and you will see that your little hole for your cord is right in exactly the right place for when you turn the top over 3 centimetres. Pin it in place. Now that hole is exactly where you need it for the cord to be threaded through. Pin the whole top of the bag down 3 centimetres all the way around, and then what you're going to do is you're going to stitch around the top of the bag just at that 3 centimetre mark. I would suggest when you do stitch around the top of your bag, that you have your bag right side out like this one, and pop the bag in this way up so that you're stitching on the inside, but that the top of the bag is at the top of the machine rather than going underneath and around the free arm. This also means you've got more space to be able to hold the fabric out and get a really nice clean line of stitching around the top. once you've done that, you will end up with your row of stitching like this. You see it here. That's your bottom row of stitching, 3 centimeters from the top. And then I want you to add a second row of stitching right at the very, very top of the bag. And you can just go backwards and forwards 3 or 4 times when you go across the seams, the side seams, to reinforce that hole, because you don't want that to come apart when someone's using it. But what I recommend is that you actually use like a buttonhole stitch instead. So, and I've done this just across the top and across the bottom of that hole, just where the stitching is, and that should hold that nice and secure and make it very, very strong. And then once you have your cable, your cord I should say, you just thread it straight through that hole. But we haven't got our cord as yet.